The security footage showed her sleeping in his building for 3 months, and James Whitmore had no idea who she was or how she got past his $1 million security system. The woman appeared on camera every night around midnight, slipping through shadows like a ghost, carrying nothing but a worn backpack and a determined expression that made his chest tighten with an emotion he couldn't name. She never stole anything, never caused damage, just found different corners to rest her head each night, always gone before sunrise. The most unsettling part wasn't that she'd been there so long undetected, it was that watching her on the grainy footage, James felt less alone than he had in years. Lightning split the sky outside his penthouse windows, casting harsh shadows across the marble floors of his living room. The storm had been building all evening, matching the tempest in his mind since his head of security, Robert, had burst into his office with the news. James sat in his leather chair, the one that cost more than most people made in a year, staring at the frozen image on his laptop screen. The woman couldn't be more than 30, with dark skin and expressive eyes that seemed to look directly through the camera into his soul. "How is this possible?" he had asked Robert earlier, his voice barely controlled. "I spend millions on security, and you're telling me someone's been living in my building like it's a hotel?" Robert had shifted uncomfortably, his usual confidence shaken. "Sir, she's incredibly smart about it. She never uses the same entrance twice, never stays in the same spot. She knows our patrol schedules somehow. And..." He paused, looking embarrassed. "She's been leaving the spaces cleaner than she found them." That detail had hit James like a physical blow. Even homeless and desperate, this woman had more dignity than most of the people in his social circle. The rain hammered against his windows now, each drop feeling like an accusation. Here he was, sitting in luxury that could house 100 people, while she slept on concrete floors in an empty building. James had built Whitmore Technologies from nothing, turning a small software startup into a billion-dollar empire. At 35, he was one of the youngest billionaires in the country, with more money than he could spend in 10 lifetimes. He owned 3 homes, drove cars worth more than houses, and could buy anything his heart desired. The problem was, his heart didn't seem to desire anything anymore. The penthouse felt like a museum tonight, all cold perfection and sterile beauty. The art on his walls was worth millions, chosen by an interior designer he'd never met. The kitchen, which could serve a restaurant, remained mostly unused except by his housekeeper. Even his bedroom, with its imported Italian furniture and Egyptian cotton sheets, felt like sleeping in a showroom. His phone buzzed with another message from his assistant about tomorrow's board meeting. The company was thriving, stock prices soaring, but James felt like he was drowning in his own success. Every day brought the same routine. Wake up alone, eat breakfast prepared by someone else, attend meetings where people agreed with everything he said whether he was right or wrong, come home to silence. The woman in the footage had disrupted that routine just by existing. She'd been so close, just a few blocks away, while he'd been going through the motions of living. James found himself wondering what had brought her to his building. What was her story? Where had she come from? The questions circled in his mind like the storm outside. He rewound the footage to the clearest shot of her face. There was something about her eyes that suggested intelligence, a spark that homelessness hadn't extinguished. She wasn't just surviving, she was strategizing, adapting, thinking several steps ahead. The way she moved through the building showed careful planning and respect for the space, even as she used it without permission. James had never been curious about individual people before. His world was full of networking events and charity galas where he wrote checks and made small talk, but he'd never actually wondered about someone's inner life. This woman, whose name he didn't even know, had managed to intrigue him more than anyone had in years. The storm intensified, shaking even his reinforced windows. Weather reports predicted it would last through the night, possibly into tomorrow. James thought about the woman somewhere out there in this weather, probably seeking shelter wherever she could find it. The building where she'd been staying was scheduled for demolition next month, which meant she'd been living on borrowed time anyway. He closed the laptop and walked to his floor-to-ceiling windows, looking out at the city lights blurred by rain. Somewhere in that maze of streets and shadows, she was probably cold and wet and scared. The thought bothered him more than it should have. He'd written plenty of checks to homeless shelters over the years, but it had always been abstract charity, tax-deductible compassion that kept the reality at arm's length. This was different. This was personal, though he couldn't explain why. Maybe it was because she'd been so close to his world without him knowing. Maybe it was because she'd managed to do something hundreds of employees and security experts couldn't: surprise him. Or maybe it was simply that in a life surrounded by people who wanted something from him, she'd asked for nothing except a safe place to sleep. James made a decision that would have shocked anyone who knew him. Tomorrow he wasn't going to send security to remove her or call the police. He was going to find her himself. He was going to ask her the questions that were keeping him awake, starting with the most important one. What did she need? The thunder rolled across the city like applause, as if the universe approved of his plan. For the first time in months, James Whitmore felt truly awake. The abandoned building smelled like dust and old dreams, with rain leaking through broken windows to pool on concrete floors that hadn't seen maintenance in years. James stood in the loading dock doorway, water dripping from his expensive coat, realizing he had no idea what he was actually going to say to the woman who'd been living in his property. The storm had passed, leaving behind the clean scent of washed air and his own nervous energy. He'd spent the morning pacing his penthouse, then his office, driving his assistant crazy with canceled meetings and rescheduled calls. By afternoon, he couldn't concentrate on anything except the image of intelligent eyes staring out from security footage. Finally, he told Robert he was handling the situation personally, ignoring the man's protests about safety and protocol. Now, standing in the dim light filtering through grimy windows, James questioned his impulse. The building felt different during the day, larger, more hollow, filled with echoes of whatever business had once thrived here. His footsteps sounded too loud on the concrete as he made his way deeper inside, following the path he'd memorized from hours of watching security footage. "I know you're here," he called out, his voice bouncing off empty walls. "I'm not security and I'm not calling the police. I just want to talk." Silence answered him, but not the empty silence of a truly vacant building. This silence had weight to it, the tension of someone holding their breath and hoping not to be found. James stopped walking and tried again. "My name is James Whitmore. This is my building technically, but I'm not here to kick you out. I'm here because..." He paused, realizing he didn't have a good explanation for his presence that wouldn't sound crazy or condescending. "Because I've been watching you on security cameras for 3 months, and I think you might be the most interesting person I've never met." A soft laugh echoed from somewhere above him, followed by the sound of footsteps on metal stairs. James looked up to see her descending from what had once been an office mezzanine, moving with the careful grace of someone who'd learned to navigate uncertain terrain. In person, she was smaller than the cameras had made her appear, but there was nothing diminished about her presence. She wore layers of clothing that had clearly been chosen for warmth rather than fashion, but she carried herself with a dignity that expensive clothes couldn't buy. "Interesting," she said, stopping at the bottom of the stairs but maintaining several feet of distance between them. "That's not usually the word people use for someone like me." Her voice had a slight rasp to it, probably from too many cold nights, but it was educated, articulate. Most people prefer unfortunate, or tragic, or just problem to be solved. James found himself staring, not at her circumstances but at her face. The intelligence he'd sensed in the footage was even more apparent in person, along with something else, a wariness that spoke of hard-earned survival skills. "I'm not most people," he said, then immediately felt foolish for such an obvious statement. "No," she agreed, looking him up and down with frank assessment. "Most people don't wear $1,000 coats to meet homeless women in abandoned buildings. Most people send security guards or social workers or police officers. Most people don't show up themselves." She tilted her head, studying him like he was a puzzle she was trying to solve. "So what are you, James Whitmore, who owns buildings but doesn't evict squatters?" The question hit him harder than it should have. What was he, exactly? Rich, successful, lonely, curious? None of those seemed like adequate answers. "I'm someone who's been living in a penthouse for 5 years and just realized I don't know anyone well enough to have a real conversation with them." Something shifted in her expression, a softening around the edges that suggested his honesty had surprised her. "That's either very sad or very honest," she said. "Maybe both." "What's your name?" James asked, taking a small step forward. She didn't retreat, which felt like progress. "Luna," she said after a moment's hesitation. "And before you ask, yes, like the moon. My mother was a romantic." Her tone suggested there was more to that story, but James didn't push. "Luna." He tested the name, finding it suited her somehow. "How long have you been homeless?" "Straight to the point," Luna said with another laugh, this one sharper. "Most people dance around that question for 20 minutes before they get brave enough to ask." She moved to a pile of clean cardboard that had clearly served as bedding, sitting cross-legged with practiced ease. 2 years, 4 months, 16 days. But who's counting? James remained standing, unsure of the protocol for this situation. "Do you mind if I ask what happened?" "Everyone asks what happened," Luna said, looking up at him with those arresting eyes. "They want to know if it was drugs or mental illness or just bad choices, because that would make it easier to understand. File me under cautionary tale, and move on with their day. I don't want to file you anywhere, James said quietly. I want to understand who you are. Luna studied him for a long moment, as if trying to determine whether he was genuine or just exceptionally good at seeming that way. Finally she shrugged. I was a writer. Had a book deal, small apartment, thought I was on my way to something bigger. Then my editor at the publishing house decided to plagiarize my work and publish it under his own name. When I tried to prove it was mine, his word carried more weight than mine did. Lost the deal, got blacklisted, couldn't afford rent. Turns out the literary world is smaller and more vindictive than you'd think. The casual way she delivered such a devastating summary made James's chest tighten with anger on her behalf. That's fraud. You could have sued. With what money? Luna asked, raising an eyebrow. Lawyers cost more than I made in a year. And who's going to believe an unknown writer over an established editor with connections throughout the industry? She picked at a thread on her jacket, not meeting his eyes. I tried fighting it for months. Spent everything I had on legal consultations and filing fees. By the time I gave up, I was already 3 months behind on rent. James wanted to tell her he could fix it, that money could solve her problem retroactively, but something in her posture warned him that such an offer would end the conversation immediately. Instead he asked, do you still write? Hard to write without paper or a computer or a place to keep anything you've written, Luna said, but there was longing in her voice that suggested the desire was still there. I compose stories in my head sometimes when it's quiet. Tell them to myself like bedtime stories. What kind of stories? Luna looked up at him with surprise, as if no one had asked her that question in a very long time. All kinds. Love stories where people see past surfaces to what's underneath. Adventure stories where the underdog finds strength they didn't know they had. Stories where justice actually wins in the end, even if it takes longer than it should. James felt something shift inside his chest, a recognition he couldn't name. Those sound like stories worth telling. Maybe, Luna said softly. Someday when I figure out how to tell them to more than just myself. They sat in companionable silence for a moment, the afternoon light filtering through broken windows to cast geometric patterns on the floor between them. James found himself more comfortable in this abandoned building with a homeless woman than he'd been anywhere in months. There was no pretense here, no agenda beyond the simple human desire to be understood. Why did you come here? Luna asked suddenly. Really? Not the part about security cameras and interesting people. Why did a billionaire tech mogul decide to personally visit someone living in his empty building? James considered lying, giving her some sanitized version about corporate responsibility or humanitarian concern. But her direct gaze demanded honesty. Because I've been feeling invisible lately, even though everyone can see me. And watching you on those cameras, I realized you've been invisible too, but by choice. You figured out how to move through the world without being seen, and part of me envied that. Luna was quiet for so long that James wondered if he'd said too much, revealed something that made him sound pathetic rather than human. Finally she spoke. Invisibility isn't as peaceful as you might think, she said. When no one sees you, after a while you start to forget you exist at all. The honesty in her voice hit him like a physical blow. James realized that despite their vastly different circumstances, they'd both been disappearing in their own ways, him into wealth and success that isolated him from real connection, her into survival that required hiding from the world. Maybe, James said carefully, we could try being visible to each other. Luna looked at him for a long moment, something unreadable flickering across her face. That's either the beginning of something good, she said finally, or the most expensive mistake you'll ever make. James smiled, feeling more genuine emotion than he'd experienced in years. I guess we'll find out. The storm that had been threatening all afternoon finally broke as James and Luna sat talking in the abandoned building, rain drumming against broken windows with increasing intensity. What started as scattered drops quickly became a downpour that turned the dim afternoon light even darker and sent water cascading through gaps in the roof that Luna had clearly learned to avoid. We should probably move, Luna said, glancing up at a growing stain on the ceiling above them. This place has some leaks that get pretty aggressive when it really starts coming down. James followed her lead as she gathered her few possessions with practiced efficiency, tucking everything into the worn backpack that seemed to hold her entire life. He noticed how carefully she folded even the pieces of cardboard she'd been using as bedding, as if they were valuable linens rather than discarded packaging. There's a stairwell on the east side that stays mostly dry, Luna explained, leading him through passages he never would have found on his own. The door seals pretty well and there's enough space to wait out the worst of it. The stairwell she led him to was indeed dry, a concrete-walled space that felt like a cave carved into the building's bones. Luna settled on the steps with the ease of long practice, pulling a thin blanket from her pack and wrapping it around her shoulders. James remained standing, feeling awkward and out of place in his expensive clothes. "You can sit," Luna said with amusement. "The concrete won't hurt your suit any more than standing in a condemned building already has." James sat on the step below her, close enough to continue their conversation but far enough to maintain the careful distance she seemed to prefer. Outside, the storm was building into something serious, with thunder that shook the building and lightning that briefly illuminated the stairwell through a small window near the top. "Sounds like we're going to be here for a while," Luna observed, pulling her knees up to her chest in a gesture that made her look younger and more vulnerable than her confident demeanor suggested. "Are you warm enough?" James asked, noticing how she seemed to curl into herself against the chill. The building had no heating, and even in his coat, he could feel the dampness seeping into his bones. Luna gave him a look that was both grateful and wary. "I'm fine. I've gotten used to being cold." The casual way she said it, as if adapting to discomfort was just another skill to master, made James's chest tighten with something between admiration and heartbreak. "You shouldn't have to be used to that." "Lot of things I shouldn't have to be used to," Luna said with a shrug that didn't quite hide the pain underneath. "But should and is are two different countries, and I live in the second one." Lightning flashed again, closer this time, followed immediately by thunder that seemed to rattle the very foundation of the building. Luna glanced toward the window with practiced assessment, the look of someone who'd learned to read weather like a survival manual. "This is going to be a long one," she said. "Good thing you showed up during the day instead of trying to find me tonight. I would have been long gone by the time this started." "Where do you go during storms like this?" James asked, though he wasn't sure he wanted to hear the answer. "Wherever I can," Luna said simply. 24-hour laundromats, hospital waiting rooms, all-night diners if I can nurse a cup of coffee long enough. Sometimes the subway if security isn't paying attention. You learn to read the city like a map of temporary shelter. James tried to imagine navigating life with such uncertainty, never knowing where you'd sleep or if you'd stay dry, and found he couldn't. Even his worst days were cushioned by comfort he'd always taken for granted. "That sounds exhausting." "Everything's exhausting when you don't have choices," Luna said. "But you adapt. Humans are surprisingly good at adapting when they have to be." Another flash of lightning illuminated her face, and James saw something there that made him want to ask 1,000 questions he didn't know how to voice. Instead, he found himself sharing something he'd never told anyone. "I've been having trouble sleeping lately," he said. "Not because I don't have a comfortable bed or a safe place to rest. Because I can't turn my mind off. I lie there thinking about all the things I've accomplished and wondering why none of them feel like they matter." Luna turned to look at him with interest. "What did you think would happen when you got everything you wanted?" "I thought I'd feel more," James said, struggling to put the emptiness into words. "I thought success would fill whatever was missing. Instead, it just made the missing parts more obvious." "Money problems and meaning problems," Luna said thoughtfully. "One keeps you up because you don't know where your next meal is coming from. The other keeps you up because you don't know why you're eating it." The simple way she framed it made James laugh, the first genuine laugh he'd had in weeks. "That's probably the most accurate description of my life I've ever heard." "Writers are good with words," Luna said with a small smile. "Even unemployed ones." The storm continued to rage outside, but inside the stairwell, something else was building, a connection that had nothing to do with their circumstances and everything to do with the recognition of shared humanity. James found himself telling Luna things he'd never said out loud, how success had isolated him from real friendship, how every relationship felt transactional, how he'd started to wonder if anyone would miss him if he disappeared. Luna listened without judgment, occasionally asking questions that helped him articulate feelings he'd been carrying alone for years. In return, she shared pieces of her story that went beyond the bare facts of her homelessness, her love of language, her dreams of writing something that would matter, her stubborn refusal to let circumstances crush her spirit entirely. "I still love words," she said at one point, her voice soft with longing. "Even when I can't afford to write them down, I collect them in my head. Beautiful words, funny words, words that sound like what they mean. It's like keeping a garden that no one can take away from you." "What's your favorite word?" James asked. Luna considered this seriously. "Serendipity. The idea that beautiful things can happen by accident, that the universe sometimes arranges surprises that are better than anything you could have planned. Like meeting someone in an abandoned building during a storm?" "Maybe," Luna said, and James caught something in her tone that made his pulse quicken. "What about you? What's your favorite word?" James thought about it, surprised to realize no one had ever asked him that question. I used to think it was success, he said finally. But sitting here with you, I think maybe it's conversation. Real conversation where both people are actually listening instead of just waiting for their turn to talk. They talked until the storm began to subside, their voices echoing softly in the concrete space as lightning gradually moved off into the distance. James learned that Luna had grown up in a small town where everyone knew everyone else's business, that she'd always been the girl with her nose in a book, that she'd come to the city with dreams as big as her talent and no understanding of how cruel the world could be to dreamers. Luna learned that James had built his company to prove something to a father who died before seeing his success, that wealth had become a wall between him and authentic connection, that he'd never learned how to want things that couldn't be bought. As the last of the thunder faded into the distance, James realized something had shifted between them. The careful distance Luna had maintained had softened into something warmer, and the loneliness he'd carried for so long felt lighter somehow. The storm's passing, Luna observed, listening to the gentler sound of rain against windows. Yeah, James said, though he was reluctant to leave this unexpected sanctuary they'd created together. Luna, can I ask you something? You've been asking me things all evening, she pointed out with a smile. This is different. James took a breath, knowing he was about to change everything between them. What if you didn't have to go back to sleeping in abandoned buildings? What if there was another option? Luna's expression immediately became guarded. What kind of option? I have a guest apartment that no one ever uses, James said carefully. It's small but it's warm and dry and safe. You could stay there while you figure out what comes next. The silence that followed felt endless. Luna stared at him with an expression he couldn't read, and James wondered if he'd just ruined the best conversation he'd had in years by making it sound like charity. Why? She asked finally. And don't tell me it's because you're a good person. Good people don't become billionaires by accident. James considered lying, making it sound purely altruistic, but Luna's direct gaze demanded honesty. Because talking to you tonight, I remembered what it felt like to be interested in another person's thoughts. Because you see things clearly, and I've been living in a fog of my own privilege for so long I'd forgotten what clarity looked like. Because... He paused, searching for the right words. Because I think we could help each other figure out how to be visible again. Luna was quiet for a long time, her fingers playing with the edge of her blanket as she considered his offer. Finally, she looked up at him with something that might have been hope. I can't pay rent, she said. I'm not asking you to. I don't have references or credit or any of the things landlords usually want. I'm not a landlord. I'm just someone with extra space and a growing suspicion that sharing it might benefit both of us. Luna studied his face as if trying to read his intentions written there. What happens when you get bored of having a pet homeless person to make you feel better about yourself? The blunt question should have offended him, but James recognized the self-protection in it. What happens when you decide I'm too broken by wealth to be worth saving? That surprised a laugh out of her. Fair point. She was quiet for another moment, then nodded slowly. Okay, James Whitmore. I'll try your guest apartment. But I have conditions. Name them. This isn't charity. If I stay, I contribute something. I clean, I cook, I help somehow. I won't be anyone's good deed. Agreed. And if either of us decides this isn't working, no hard feelings. I go back to my life, you go back to yours, and we pretend this conversation never happened. James extended his hand. Deal. Luna shook it, her grip firm and warm. Deal. Now, can we get out of this stairwell? I may be used to concrete, but even I have limits. As they made their way out of the building together, James realized that the storm hadn't just passed over them, it had washed something clean between them, leaving space for whatever came next. The guest apartment in James's building was larger than Luna's entire childhood bedroom, with floor-to-ceiling windows that offered a view of the city she'd been navigating from ground level for over 2 years. She stood at those windows now, coffee mug in hand, watching the morning rush hour unfold below while trying to process the surreal turn her life had taken in less than 24 hours. The apartment was furnished with the kind of understated luxury that whispered rather than shouted its expense: soft leather furniture, hardwood floors that gleamed without being flashy, a kitchen equipped with appliances Luna had only seen in magazines. But what struck her most was how impersonal it felt, like a high-end hotel room designed to be pleasant without revealing anything about its occupant. A soft knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. Luna? It's James. I brought breakfast. She opened the door to find him holding a bag from what was clearly an expensive bakery, looking oddly nervous for someone in his own building. He'd traded yesterday's storm-soaked business attire for jeans and a simple sweater, an outfit that somehow made him seem more approachable while still obviously costly. "You didn't have to do that," Luna said, stepping aside to let him in. "I wasn't sure what you liked," James said, setting the bag on the kitchen counter with careful precision. "So I got a variety. Croissants, muffins, some fruit." Luna watched him unpack the bag with an attention to detail that seemed excessive for pastries, and realized he was as uncertain about this arrangement as she was. The thought was oddly comforting, at least they were both improvising. "Coffee's fresh," she offered, gesturing toward the machine she'd figured out through trial and error that morning. "I hope you don't mind that I made myself at home with the kitchen." "That's what it's for," James said, accepting the mug she poured for him. "How did you sleep?" The question was simple, but Luna heard the genuine concern underneath it. "Better than I have in months," she admitted. "Turns out not wondering if you're going to be safe makes a difference in sleep quality." "Who knew?" James's expression darkened slightly at the reminder of what her life had been like, but he didn't push for details. Instead, he selected a blueberry muffin from the bag and took a seat at the small dining table. "I was thinking about what you said yesterday. About contributing something if you stayed here." Luna joined him at the table, wrapping her hands around her coffee mug for warmth and comfort. "I meant that. I don't accept charity." "It's not charity if it's mutually beneficial," James said carefully. "I've been thinking about what you told me about your writing, and I have a proposition." Luna raised an eyebrow. "I'm listening." "My company generates massive amounts of content, technical documentation, marketing materials, internal communications. Most of it is written by people who are brilliant with technology but—" He paused, searching for diplomatic phrasing. "But write like they learned English from computer manuals?" Luna suggested with a smile. "Exactly. What if I hired you as a freelance editor and writer? You could work from here, set your own hours, help us communicate more clearly with actual humans." Luna stared at him for a long moment. "You're offering me a job. I'm offering you work that needs doing at a rate that reflects the value you'd provide. There's a difference." "What's the rate?" Luna asked, though she was already mentally calculating how long it would take to save enough for first month's rent and deposit on a place of her own. James named a figure that made Luna nearly choke on her coffee. That's more than I made at my publishing job." "Good writing is valuable," James said simply. "Most companies just don't realize how much they need it until they find someone who can actually do it well." Luna set down her mug and studied James's face, looking for signs of pity or condescension. She found only sincerity and what might have been hope. "Why are you doing this?" "Honestly? Because I spent 3 hours talking to you yesterday and learned more about effective communication than I have in years of business meetings. Because you have insights about language and human nature that my company needs. And because—" He paused, seeming to weigh his words. "Because I'd like to keep having conversations with someone who tells me the truth instead of what they think I want to hear." The last part was said quietly, with a vulnerability that caught Luna off guard. She'd been prepared for pity, for the kind of well-meaning charity that came with strings attached. She hadn't been prepared for mutual need disguised as professional opportunity. "What kind of writing would I be doing?" she asked. James's face lit up with enthusiasm. "Everything. User manuals that people might actually read, marketing copy that doesn't sound like it was written by robots, internal memos that communicate clearly instead of hiding behind corporate speak. I've got months' worth of backlogged content that needs a human touch." Luna found herself smiling at his excitement. "You really hate corporate communication, don't you?" "I hate communication that doesn't actually communicate anything," James said. "Half the emails in my company could be replaced with, 'I sent you this to cover my ass,' and they'd be more honest." "Okay," Luna said, the word coming out before she'd fully processed the decision. "I'll try it. But same conditions as the apartment if either of us decides it's not working, no hard feelings." "Deal," James said, extending his hand across the table. As Luna shook it, she felt a mixture of excitement and terror that she hadn't experienced since her first book deal. The excitement of possibility, the terror of hope that might be disappointed again. "When do I start?" she asked. "How about now? I've got a user manual for our latest software update that's currently written in what I can only describe as hostile technobabble. Want to see if you can make it comprehensible to humans?" Luna grinned, feeling something inside her chest unfurl like a flower that had been waiting for sunlight. "Show me the hostile technobabble." James pulled out his laptop and opened a document that made Luna wince just looking at the first paragraph. Dense technical jargon mixed with unnecessarily complex sentence structures created something that seemed designed to confuse rather than inform. "This is what happens when engineers write for users," James said apologetically. It's accurate but reading it feels like being attacked by a dictionary, Luna finished. I can work with this. It's going to need a complete rewrite though. Is that okay? More than okay. Make it as human as you want. Luna spent the next 2 hours completely absorbed in the work, breaking down complex technical concepts into clear, accessible language. She found herself enjoying the puzzle of it, how to explain sophisticated software features in terms that wouldn't intimidate users, how to anticipate questions and address them before they arose, how to inject personality into technical writing without sacrificing clarity. James worked quietly beside her, occasionally answering questions about specific features but mostly just watching her transform his company's impenetrable documentation into something that actually made sense. Every so often she'd read a particularly awkward original sentence aloud, and they'd both laugh at how unnecessarily complicated it was. Listen to this, Luna said, pointing to a section about password requirements. It says, users must configure authentication credentials utilizing alphanumeric character sequences of sufficient complexity to ensure optimal security protocol adherence. Meaning? James asked, though he was already smiling. Your password needs letters and numbers, Luna said. 17 words reduced to 6, and somehow the shorter version is actually more informative. This is why I needed you, James said, leaning over to read her revised version. You're not just making it shorter, you're making it more useful. Luna felt warmth spread through her chest at the genuine admiration in his voice. It had been so long since someone had valued her skills, since she'd felt competent and needed rather than merely tolerated. I forgot how much I missed this, she said softly. Writing? Solving problems with words. Finding the right way to say something so that it actually helps people instead of confusing them. Luna saved her work and leaned back in her chair. I used to think writing was about creating beautiful sentences, but it's really about building bridges between what someone knows and what they need to know. James was quiet for a moment, studying her face with an intensity that made her self-conscious. What? She asked. I was just thinking about what you said yesterday about composing stories in your head. Do you still do that? Luna felt her cheeks warm. Sometimes. It's hard not to when you spend a lot of time alone with your thoughts. What kind of story would you tell about this? James gestured between them, encompassing the apartment, the work spread across the table, the strange circumstances that had brought them together. This? Luna considered the question seriously. I think I'd write about two people who were both lost in different ways, and how they found each other by accident. I'd make it a story about how sometimes the best things happen when you stop trying to control everything and just let life surprise you. What would happen to them? James asked. In your story? Luna met his eyes, seeing something there that made her pulse quicken. I don't know yet, she said honestly. I'm still figuring out how this one ends. The moment stretched between them, charged with possibility and the growing awareness that their relationship was evolving beyond the practical arrangement they'd agreed to. Luna felt the urge to retreat into safer territory, to remind them both of the boundaries they'd established, but something in James's expression stopped her. Luna, he said quietly, I want you to know that this, he gestured toward the laptop and the work they'd been doing, isn't just about giving you something to do. The work you've done this morning is genuinely excellent. You have a gift for making complex things accessible, and that's valuable regardless of how we met. Luna felt tears prick at her eyes, unexpected and unwelcome. It had been so long since someone had seen her as more than her circumstances, since she'd felt valuable for her mind rather than pitted for her situation. Thank you, she managed. I have another confession, James said, his voice careful. I've been thinking about what you said about visibility, about how being invisible made you start to forget you existed. I realized I've been doing the same thing just from the opposite direction. I've been so visible that I forgot who I actually was underneath all the success and expectations. Luna nodded, understanding more than he probably realized. It's hard to be yourself when everyone else has decided who you should be. Exactly. But talking to you, working with you today, I feel like myself again. Like the person I was before I had to be the CEO or the billionaire or the success story. Just, James. Luna reached across the table and covered his hand with hers, a gesture that surprised them both with its naturalness. I like just James, she said softly. They sat like that for a moment, hands touching across the table covered with work that had brought them together in unexpected ways. Luna felt something shifting inside her, walls she'd built for protection beginning to lower in the face of genuine connection. I should probably get back to work, James said eventually, though he made no move to pull his hand away. I have a meeting at 3 and I should review the material beforehand. Of course, Luna said, reluctantly withdrawing her hand. I'll keep working on this manual. How do you want me to send you the finished sections? Email is fine. I'll set you up with a company account. James paused at the door, turning back with something that looked like nervousness. Luna? Would you like to have dinner together tonight? I could cook or we could order something. I'd like to continue our conversation. Luna felt her heart skip in a way that had nothing to do with gratitude and everything to do with the growing attraction she'd been trying to ignore. I'd like that, she said. But I should warn you I'm a pretty good cook myself. If you're going to feed me, you'd better bring your A game. James's face broke into a grin that transformed his entire expression. Challenge accepted. How do you feel about Italian food? I feel like you're about to find out whether your money can buy good taste in restaurants, Luna said with a smile. Actually, James said, I was thinking of cooking it myself. I may be rusty, but I used to be pretty decent in the kitchen before I got used to having everything done for me. Luna felt another piece of her carefully constructed distance crumble. The image of James cooking dinner for her, choosing to do something personal and hands-on rather than ordering from the most expensive restaurant in the city, was unexpectedly touching. Then I'll definitely be there, she said. What time? 7? I'll need time to remember how to actually cook instead of just reheating things my housekeeper prepared. After James left, Luna sat in the quiet apartment, staring at the laptop screen full of her work. For the first time in over 2 years, she had a job that used her skills, a safe place to sleep, and the beginning of what might be a real friendship. More than that, she had hope not just for survival, but for the possibility of building something meaningful from the wreckage of her old life. She opened a new document and began typing. Not corporate communications this time, but the beginning of a story about a woman who learned that sometimes losing everything was the only way to find what she really needed. The words flowed like water after a drought, filling the screen with possibility and the promise of more to come. The kitchen in James's penthouse smelled like garlic and fresh herbs, a warm, lived-in scent that seemed foreign in the usually pristine space. Luna found him standing at the stove, sleeves rolled up and a dish towel tucked into his belt, stirring something in a large pan with the focused concentration of someone who was out of practice but determined to succeed. Smells amazing, Luna said, setting down the bottle of wine. She'd brought a modest bottle that had cost her more than she'd spent on food in weeks, but seemed important for reasons she couldn't fully articulate. James looked up with a smile that was equal parts pleased and nervous. I'm not sure amazing is the right word yet, but it's definitely edible. I think. I may have gotten a little ambitious with the recipe. Luna moved to peer over his shoulder at the pan, where chicken simmered in a sauce that looked and smelled like it belonged in a good restaurant. This is ambitious? What do you call simple? Takeout, James admitted with a laugh. I've been living on prepared meals and restaurant food for so long that I forgot how much work actual cooking is. But also how satisfying it is to make something yourself. Luna watched him work, noting the careful attention he paid to timing and seasoning, the way he tasted and adjusted the sauce with the patience of someone who genuinely cared about the outcome. It was a different side of him than the confident businessman she'd first met, more vulnerable and human. Can I help with anything? She asked. The salad needs dressing if you don't mind. There's olive oil and balsamic in the pantry, and I think there's some lemon in the fridge. Luna found herself moving comfortably around the kitchen, locating ingredients and whisking together a simple vinaigrette while James finished the chicken. They worked in companionable silence, occasionally bumping into each other in the narrow space between counter and stove, each contact bringing a small jolt of awareness that Luna tried to ignore. So, James said as they sat down to eat, how was your first day as a corporate communications consultant? Luna took a bite of the chicken, surprised by how good it actually was. Better than I expected. I finished the user manual and started on that marketing copy you sent over. I have to ask who wrote the original version? Because it reads like it was translated from English into another language and then back into English by someone who'd never seen either language before. James laughed so hard he nearly choked on his wine. That's probably not far from the truth. We hired a marketing firm last year that specialized in technical communications optimization. Apparently that means taking simple ideas and making them as complicated as possible. Well, I've simplified it back into something that might actually convince people to buy your software instead of running away screaming, Luna said. Though I have to admit I'm curious about what the software actually does. The marketing copy was so convoluted I couldn't figure out what problem it's supposed to solve. James's expression grew more animated. It's actually pretty cool. It's designed to help small businesses manage their online presence, social media, email marketing, customer relationship management all in one platform. The idea is that a local bakery or bookstore shouldn't need a computer science degree to connect with their customers online. Luna paused with her fork halfway to her mouth. That's actually brilliant. Small businesses need that kind of tool, but most of them can't afford to hire experts to manage their digital presence. Exactly. But somehow our marketing team made it sound like enterprise-level software that requires a PhD to operate. I've been wondering why our sales numbers don't match the enthusiasm we get from people who actually use the product. It's a communication problem, Luna said, her mind already working through possibilities. You're not speaking to your actual customers, you're speaking to people who think technology should be intimidating. But small business owners don't want to be intimidated, they want to be empowered. James leaned forward, his expression intense. How would you market it? Luna set down her fork and thought for a moment. I'd focus on the story instead of the features. Show a real bakery owner who used to spend hours trying to figure out Facebook and now has more time to bake. Show a bookstore that went from struggling to stay afloat to building a community of loyal customers. Make it about the dreams the software helps fulfill, not the technical specs it includes. That's. James shook his head with something like amazement. That's exactly what we've been missing. We've been so focused on what the software can do that we forgot to talk about why anyone would want it to do those things. Luna felt a familiar thrill of recognition, the same feeling she'd had when writing her book, the sense of understanding something important and being able to articulate it clearly. It's the same principle as the user manual. You have to meet people where they are, not where you think they should be. Would you be interested in rewriting all of our marketing materials? James asked. I mean, as a paid project, not just as a favor. This could be a complete overhaul of how we present ourselves to the world. Luna felt her pulse quicken. It was the kind of project she dreamed about when she was starting her writing career, meaningful work that could actually impact people's lives, not just pretty words arranged in pleasing patterns. I'd love to, she said. But I should probably understand the software better first. Maybe talk to some of the people who actually use it. I can arrange that, James said immediately. In fact, I know a coffee shop owner who's been using our platform for about 6 months. She's been asking for an opportunity to give feedback to someone who could actually implement changes. Would you be interested in meeting with her? Absolutely, Luna said, then paused as a thought occurred to her. James, can I ask you something personal? Of course. How did you get into this business? I mean, what made you want to help small businesses specifically? James was quiet for a moment, swirling wine in his glass. My father owned a small auto repair shop when I was growing up. He was incredibly skilled at fixing cars, but he struggled with the business side of things. Marketing, customer relationships, even basic bookkeeping, it was all overwhelming for him. He'd work 12-hour days in the garage, then come home and spend hours trying to figure out invoicing or how to reach new customers. Luna heard the emotion in his voice and waited for him to continue. He died of a heart attack when I was 22, James said quietly. The doctor said it was stress-related. I always wondered if things might have been different if he'd had better tools to manage the business side of his work. If he could have focused on what he was good at instead of struggling with tasks that felt impossible. I'm sorry, Luna said softly. I built Whitmore Technologies to be what my father needed but never had, James continued. Tools that would let skilled people focus on their craft instead of drowning in administrative work. But somewhere along the way I lost sight of that mission. I got caught up in growth and profits and market share, and forgot about the actual people we were supposed to be helping. Luna reached across the table and took his hand, a gesture that felt natural despite their brief acquaintance. Maybe that's what you needed to remember. Why you were really building this company. James looked at their joined hands, his expression soft. I think you might be right. I've been so focused on success that I forgot what success was supposed to mean. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, the weight of shared understanding settling between them. Luna felt something shifting in her chest, a warmth that had nothing to do with the wine and everything to do with the man sitting across from her. Can I tell you something? Luna said finally. About why I really became a writer? James nodded encouragingly. I grew up in a town where everyone knew everyone else's business, but nobody really knew anyone else's heart. People made assumptions about each other based on appearances or circumstances, and those assumptions became facts in their minds. I wanted to write stories that showed the complexity underneath the surface, that the quiet kid might be dealing with something profound, that the successful businessman might be desperately lonely, that the homeless woman might have wisdom that could change someone's life. James squeezed her hand gently. You're still doing that. Just not in fiction. What do you mean? You saw through my wealth to the person underneath. You understood that my company's communication problems were really about losing touch with our purpose. You're still writing stories, they're just happening in real life now. Luna felt tears prick at her eyes, unexpected and overwhelming. I hadn't thought of it that way. Maybe that's your gift, James said. Not just putting words together, but seeing the truth in situations and helping other people see it too. Luna looked at him across the table, this man who had appeared in her life like an answer to a question she hadn't known how to ask. He was offering her more than work or shelter, he was offering her a chance to remember who she was before circumstances had forced her to become someone else. James, she said carefully, I need to ask you something and I need you to be honest with me. Always. Is this real? This job, this apartment, this? She gestured between them, whatever this is between us? Or am I some kind of project for you, a way to feel better about having more money than you know what to do with? James was quiet for a long moment, his expression serious. It's real, he said finally. More real than anything I've experienced in years. But I understand why you'd question it. I've been asking myself the same thing, whether I'm helping you because I genuinely care about you, or because helping you makes me feel like a better person. Luna appreciated his honesty, even as it made her heart race with uncertainty. I think, James continued, that it started as something that made me feel better about myself. But it's become something else. It's become about genuinely caring what happens to you, about wanting to see you succeed, not because it reflects well on me, but because you deserve to succeed. Because you're talented and kind and insightful, and the world is better when people like you get to share their gifts. Luna felt something loosen in her chest, a knot of suspicion and self-protection that had been wound tight for years. Okay, she said simply. Okay. Okay, I believe you. And I believe this is real. Luna took a deep breath. Because I care about what happens to you too. I care about whether you remember why you built your company. I care about whether you find your way back to feeling like success means something. And that's not because you're paying me or housing me, it's because you're a good person who got lost in his own achievements. James smiled, and Luna saw relief and something deeper in his expression. So what do we do now? Now, Luna said, we figure out how to build something together. Starting with your marketing materials and ending with, well, I guess we'll see where it ends. James raised his wine glass. To seeing where it ends. Luna clinked her glass against his, feeling for the first time in years that she was exactly where she was supposed to be. The coffee shop was exactly the kind of place Luna had imagined when James talked about small businesses needing better tools, warm, inviting, with mismatched furniture and local art covering the walls. The owner, Maria Santos, was a woman in her 40s with graying hair pulled back in a practical ponytail and eyes that lit up when she talked about her business. I opened this place 3 years ago, Maria explained, setting down steaming mugs of coffee that smelled like heaven. I'd been working corporate jobs for 20 years, saving every penny, dreaming of having my own space where people could come together over good coffee and real conversation. Luna sipped her coffee and glanced around the busy shop, noting the comfortable mix of customers, students with laptops, business people in suits, elderly couples sharing newspapers, young mothers with strollers. It seems like you've created exactly what you wanted. I have, Maria said with a smile. But it almost didn't happen. The first year was brutal. I knew how to make coffee and create a welcoming environment, but I had no idea how to reach customers who weren't already walking by my door. I was spending more time trying to figure out social media and email marketing than actually running the shop. James leaned forward with interest. What changed? Your software, Maria said simply. My accountant recommended it when I was about 6 months away from going under. I was skeptical at first. I'd tried other programs that promised to simplify online marketing, but they were either too complicated or too basic to be useful. Luna pulled out her notebook, genuinely curious about Maria's experience. What made the difference? It understood what I actually needed, Maria said. I didn't need to become a marketing expert. I needed tools that would let me stay connected with my customers without taking time away from running the shop. The software handles my social media posts, sends out newsletters about new menu items and events, and tracks which customers are interested in what kinds of offerings. Can you give me a specific example? Luna asked. Maria's face lit up. Last month, I wanted to start a weekly poetry reading night. In the old days, I would have put up a flyer and hoped for the best. With the software, I was able to send targeted emails to customers who had previously attended other events, post about it on social media with scheduling that reached people at optimal times, and even create a simple RSVP system so I knew how many people to expect. And did it work? We had 35 people at the first reading, Maria said proudly. The poet sold 12 books, I sold more coffee and pastries than I do on most weekend evenings, and 3 people asked about hosting their own readings. It's become one of our most popular events. Luna scribbled notes furiously, seeing the story she needed to tell taking shape. This wasn't about technology, it was about dreams being realized, communities being built, small businesses becoming gathering places that enriched people's lives. What would you tell other small business owners who are struggling with the same challenges you faced? Luna asked. Maria considered the question seriously. I'd tell them that you don't have to choose between focusing on your craft and growing your business. The right tools can handle the technical stuff so you can focus on what you do best, whether that's making coffee, fixing cars, or selling books. After they finished their coffee and said goodbye to Maria, Luna and James walked slowly back toward his building, both lost in thought. The autumn air was crisp, with the kind of golden light that made the city look like it was posing for a postcard. That was exactly what I needed to hear, Luna said finally. Maria's story is so much more compelling than any list of software features could ever be. I've been thinking about what she said, James replied. About not having to choose between craft and business. I think I've been making that choice for years, focusing so much on the business side that I forgot what we were actually trying to accomplish. Luna stopped walking and turned to face him. What do you mean? I mean, I've been measuring success by stock prices and market share instead of by stories like Maria's. When was the last time I actually talked to someone who uses our software? When was the last time I asked whether we were really helping people achieve their dreams? Luna saw something in his expression that made her heart ache, a recognition of time lost, of purpose obscured by the very success he'd worked so hard to achieve. It's not too late, she said gently. You can refocus. You can remember what you were really trying to build. I want to, James said. But I'm not sure I know how anymore. I've been the CEO for so long that I'm not sure I remember how to be the person who started the company. Luna took his hand, the gesture feeling natural despite the people passing around them on the sidewalk. Then let's figure it out together. I'll help you remember your mission, and you can help me remember what it feels like to have work that matters. James squeezed her hand. Is that what this is? You remember what it feels like to have work that matters? For the first time in years, Luna admitted. Maria's story made me realize that I'm not just editing marketing copy, I'm helping people understand how to build the lives they want. That's what I always wanted my writing to do. They resumed walking, still holding hands, and Luna felt something shift between them. The careful distance they'd maintained was dissolving into something warmer, more intimate. She could feel James's attention on her, different from the professional respect he'd shown for her work. Luna, James said as they reached his building, can I ask you something personal? You've been asking me personal things since we met, Luna pointed out with a smile. This is different. James stopped walking and turned to face her fully. I've been trying to figure out how to say this without sounding presumptuous or making you feel uncomfortable. Luna felt her pulse quicken. Just say it. I think I'm falling for you, James said quietly. Not because you're grateful for my help and not because helping you makes me feel like a better person. I'm falling for your intelligence, your insight, the way you see through surface things to what's really underneath. I'm falling for your strength and your kindness and the way you make me remember who I wanted to be. Luna felt her breath catch. She'd been aware of the growing attraction between them, but hearing him voice it made it real in a way that was both thrilling and terrifying. James, she said carefully, I need you to understand something. I haven't been in a relationship since before I became homeless. I don't know how to be vulnerable with someone when I'm still figuring out how to trust that good things can last. I understand, James said. And I don't want to rush you or pressure you. I just wanted you to know how I feel, and that whatever happens between us, it's not going to change the fact that you deserve the job and the apartment and the respect I've been showing you. Luna studied his face, looking for signs of the entitled expectation she'd learned to watch for in men who thought their generosity entitled them to something in return. She found only sincerity and patience. I'm scared, she admitted. I'm scared of getting attached to this life and then having it disappear. I'm scared of trusting someone and being wrong about them. I'm scared of falling for you and then discovering that what you really wanted was to save someone, not to love someone. James nodded slowly. Those are all reasonable fears. I can't promise you'll never be disappointed again, but I can promise you that my feelings for you have nothing to do with your circumstances and everything to do with who you are. Luna felt tears prick at her eyes. I think I'm falling for you too, she said softly. But I need to take this slowly. I need to know that I can trust my own judgment again before I trust it with something as important as love. Slowly is good, James said, reaching up to brush a tear from her cheek. We have time. Luna leaned into his touch, feeling something inside her chest expand with possibility. Okay, she said. Let's take this slowly and see what happens. Okay, James agreed then smiled. Want to go upstairs and work on revolutionizing my company's marketing strategy? Luna laughed, the sound bright and genuine. That's the most romantic thing anyone's ever said to me. Give me time, James said, taking her hand as they entered the building. I'm just getting started. As they rode the elevator up to their respective floors, Luna caught their reflection in the mirrored walls, two people who had found each other at exactly the right moment, when they were both ready to remember who they really were. For the first time in years, she looked forward to tomorrow. The weeks that followed fell into a rhythm that felt both natural and precious to Luna. Her days were filled with work that challenged and excited her, rewriting marketing materials, interviewing small business owners, crafting stories that connected Whitmore Technologies tools to real people's dreams. Her evenings were spent with James, cooking dinner together, talking about everything and nothing, slowly building the foundation of something that felt solid and real. Tonight, James had surprised her by suggesting they walk to a nearby park instead of staying in for dinner. The October air was crisp enough to require jackets, and the trees were showing off their autumn colors like nature's own marketing campaign. I have something to tell you, James said as they settled on a bench overlooking a small pond where ducks paddled in lazy circles. Luna felt her stomach tighten with familiar anxiety. Good things ending, she'd learned, often began with someone having something to tell you. What is it? The board meeting is next week, James said. I'm going to present the new marketing strategy you've been developing. If they approve it, and I think they will, it's going to mean a complete overhaul of how we present ourselves to the world. Luna relaxed slightly. Work news, not personal news. That's exciting. Are you nervous? Terrified, James admitted with a laugh. But also more excited about the company than I've been in years. You've helped me remember what we're really trying to accomplish. You remembered it yourself, Luna said. I just helped you articulate it. James turned to face her on the bench, his expression serious. Luna, I need you to know that whatever happens with the board meeting, your job is secure. Even if they hate the new direction, even if they decide to go back to the old way of doing things, I want you to keep working with us. You're the best writer I've ever worked with, and more than that, you understand what we're trying to achieve. Luna felt warmth spread through her chest at his words. Do you think they'll approve it? I think they'll approve it because it's going to make us more money, James said. The early feedback from customers has been incredible. Maria's coffee shop has become a case study that our sales team is already using. We've got 3 other small businesses asking to be featured in our marketing materials because they want to share their success stories. That's wonderful, Luna said, genuinely pleased. There's nothing more powerful than real people talking about real results. Which brings me to the other thing I wanted to tell you, James said, and Luna heard something different in his tone. I've been thinking about what you said about taking things slowly between us. Luna felt her pulse quicken. And I think I've been falling for you a little more every day, James said quietly. Not just your work, not just your intelligence, but you. The way you hum while you're editing. The way you get excited about finding the perfect word. The way you listen to people's stories like they're the most important thing in the world. Luna felt her breath catch. James? I know we agreed to take things slowly, James continued, but I wanted you to know that my feelings for you aren't going anywhere. I'm not going to get bored or change my mind or decide I was just going through a phase. What I feel for you is real and it's growing stronger. Luna looked at him sitting beside her in the golden afternoon light, this man who had appeared in her life like an answer to prayers she hadn't known how to pray. I need to tell you something too, she said. James waited, his expression patient but hopeful. I've been falling for you too, Luna admitted. And it scares me because I don't have experience with relationships that work. I don't know how to be in love without losing myself, and I don't know how to trust that someone will stay when they really see who I am. Who are you? James asked gently. Luna thought about the question, realizing she'd been defining herself by her circumstances for so long that she'd almost forgotten there was a person underneath them. I'm someone who believes in happy endings even though I've seen very few of them. I'm someone who thinks words can change the world if you use them right. I'm someone who's been hurt badly enough to build walls, but who still wants to believe that love is possible. I'm someone who's been successful at everything except the things that actually matter, James said. I'm someone who's been lonely in crowds and empty in abundance. I'm someone who's been waiting his whole life for a conversation that feels like coming home. Luna felt tears prick at her eyes. Is that what this feels like to you? Coming home. Every time I see you, James said simply. Every time we talk, every time you smile at something I've said, every time you challenge me to be better than I was yesterday. You feel like home. Luna reached for his hand, intertwining their fingers. You feel like possibility to me. Like the future I thought I'd lost when everything fell apart. James brought their joined hands to his lips, pressing a soft kiss to her knuckles. Luna, I know we agreed to take things slowly, but I need to ask you something. What? Would you be my date to the board meeting next week? I know it sounds like the most boring date in the history of dating, but I want you there when I present the work we've done together. I want the board to meet the person who's been helping me remember what this company is really about. Luna felt a mixture of excitement and terror. Meeting James's board of directors felt like stepping into his world in a way that would make their relationship public, official, real in a way that couldn't be undone. What would I wear? She asked, then immediately felt silly for such a practical concern. James smiled. Whatever makes you feel confident and comfortable. Though if you want to go shopping for something new, I'd be happy to. No, Luna said quickly. I appreciate the offer, but I need to handle that myself. I have money now from the work I've been doing. I can buy my own dress. James nodded, understanding the importance of her independence. Of course. I just want you to know that the offer stands if you change your mind. Luna squeezed his hand. I'll be your date to the board meeting. But I have one condition. Name it. Afterwards, regardless of how it goes, I want you to take me somewhere that isn't fancy or expensive. I want to go somewhere that feels like us, not like the CEO of Whitmore Technologies and his date. James grinned. I know exactly the place. There's a little diner about 20 minutes from here that serves the best pie in the city. It's nothing fancy, but the owner makes you feel like family from the moment you walk in. Perfect, Luna said. That sounds perfect. As they sat watching the ducks and holding hands in the fading light, Luna felt something settle inside her chest, a sense of rightness, of being exactly where she was supposed to be with exactly the right person. The future still felt uncertain, full of questions and possibilities, but for the first time in years, uncertain felt like an adventure rather than a threat. James? She said softly. Yeah. I think I'm ready to stop taking things slowly. James turned to look at her, hope and joy spreading across his face. Are you sure? I'm sure, Luna said and meant it. I'm sure that what I feel for you is real. I'm sure that you see me for who I am, not just what I've been through. I'm sure that I want to find out what happens when two people who were lost decide to build something together. James leaned closer, his voice soft. Can I kiss you? Luna felt her heart race as she nodded. Yes. The kiss was gentle, tentative, full of the promise of everything they were building together. When they broke apart, Luna felt like she was glowing from the inside out. So, James said, his forehead resting against hers, what happens now? Luna smiled, feeling lighter than she had in years. Now we figure out how to be together. Really together. I like the sound of that, James said, kissing her softly once more before they stood to walk home together, hands intertwined and hearts full of possibility. The morning of the board meeting dawned gray and drizzly, the kind of weather that made Luna grateful for the warm apartment and the steaming cup of coffee James had brought her. She stood in front of the full-length mirror in her bedroom, smoothing the lines of the navy blue dress she'd bought specifically for today, professional but not severe, elegant but not trying too hard. You look beautiful, James said from the doorway, and Luna saw in his reflection that he meant it. I look terrified, Luna corrected, though she was pleased with how the dress fit. You look like someone who's about to help revolutionize a company's entire approach to communication, James said, moving to stand behind her. You look like someone who belongs in that boardroom. Luna leaned back against his chest, drawing comfort from his presence. What if they hate the new strategy? What if they think I'm just some random person you picked up off the street? First of all, you're not some random person I picked up off the street, James said firmly. You're a talented writer and strategist who's been doing incredible work. Second, they're going to love the strategy because it's brilliant and it's already showing results. Luna turned in his arms to face him. And third, even if they did hate it, which they won't, it wouldn't change anything between us. This isn't about them approving of you, Luna. You don't need their validation. Luna nodded, though her stomach was still doing acrobatics. I know. It's just, this feels like a test. Like I'm finally getting a chance to prove that I belong in this world. You've already proven that, James said, kissing her forehead. But I understand why today feels important. An hour later, Luna found herself in the most intimidating conference room she'd ever seen, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, a table that could seat 20 people, and technology that probably cost more than most people's cars. The board members filed in one by one, a collection of serious-faced men and women in expensive suits who nodded politely at James's introduction but regarded Luna with the careful neutrality of people reserving judgment. "Ladies and gentlemen," James began once everyone was seated, "I want to talk to you today about the future of Whitmore Technologies. Not just our financial future, but our mission, who we serve and why we serve them." Luna watched the faces around the table as James presented their work, noting the subtle shifts in expression as he moved from abstract strategy to concrete results. When he showed Maria's coffee shop case study, she saw several board members lean forward with interest. When he presented the preliminary sales numbers from their pilot program, she saw skepticism transform into attention. "The question before us today," James continued, "isn't whether this approach will be profitable. The early data suggests it will be very profitable. The question is whether we're ready to embrace a fundamental shift in how we see ourselves. Are we a technology company that serves businesses, or are we a company that helps people achieve their dreams using technology?" Board member Patricia Chin raised her hand. "This is all very inspiring, James, but what are the actual metrics? How do we measure success with this touchy-feely approach?" James nodded to Luna, and she felt her pulse spike as all eyes turned to her. "Customer retention is up 37% among businesses that received our new onboarding materials," Luna said, proud that her voice remained steady. "Support ticket volume is down 23% because our new documentation actually helps people solve problems themselves. And customer satisfaction scores have increased by 41%. More importantly," Luna continued, gaining confidence, "we're seeing increased customer advocacy. People are recommending our software to other business owners because they understand what it can do for them. Word-of-mouth referrals are up 60%. Board member Robert Kim looked intrigued. "What's driving that increase in advocacy?" "Stories," Luna said simply. "We stopped talking about features and started talking about outcomes. We stopped presenting ourselves as a software company and started presenting ourselves as partners in our customers' success." Patricia Chin leaned forward. "Can you give us a specific example?" Luna pulled up the presentation slide showing Maria's coffee shop. 6 months ago, Maria Santos was 6 months away from closing her coffee shop because she couldn't figure out how to reach new customers. Today, she's hosting weekly events that bring in new revenue and build community. She's not just a customer anymore, she's a success story that inspires other small business owners. And she's singing our praises to every entrepreneur she meets, added board member David Park. "I actually heard about this case study from my wife, who heard about it from a friend who attended one of those poetry readings." The mood in the room shifted, and Luna felt the board's skepticism giving way to genuine interest. James caught her eye and smiled, and she felt a surge of pride in what they'd accomplished together. Board member Jennifer Walsh spoke up. "This is impressive work, but I have to ask, what happens when the novelty wears off? How do we maintain this level of customer engagement long-term?" "We keep listening," Luna said. "We keep learning from our customers and adapting our approach based on what they need. The strategy isn't static, it's responsive." James picked up the thread. "Which brings me to my final point. This isn't just about changing our marketing materials. This is about changing our culture. I want to propose that we establish a customer story initiative, with Luna as the director. Her job would be to continuously gather feedback from our users, identify success stories, and help us adapt our products and messaging based on real customer needs." Luna felt her breath catch. A permanent position, a chance to build something lasting within James's company. But even as excitement surged through her, a small voice in her head whispered warnings about mixing personal and professional relationships. The board asked detailed questions for another hour, but Luna could tell they were sold. The numbers were too good to argue with, and the vision James had presented was compelling enough to get them excited about more than just quarterly profits. After the meeting ended and the board members filed out with approving nods and promises to vote within the week, Luna found herself alone with James in the conference room. "That was incredible," James said, pulling her into his arms. "You were incredible. Did you see their faces when you presented those retention numbers?" Luna laughed, feeling giddy with relief and accomplishment. "I can't believe they're actually going to approve it." "I can," James said. "You gave them everything they needed, proof that doing the right thing is also the profitable thing." Luna felt a question forming that she wasn't sure she wanted to ask. "James, about the director position. What about it? Is that something you've been planning, or did you just think of it in the moment?" James paused, and Luna saw something shift in his expression. "I've been thinking about it for weeks," he admitted. "But I wanted to wait until after the board meeting to discuss it with you. I didn't want you to feel pressured to say yes just to ensure the strategy got approved. Luna appreciated his thoughtfulness, but the practical side of her brain was already working through the implications. What happens to us if I become your employee? Officially, I mean. What do you mean? I mean office relationships are complicated. Power dynamics, potential conflicts of interest. What happens if things don't work out between us personally? James was quiet for a moment, clearly thinking through issues he hadn't fully considered. You're right. There would be complications. I want the job, Luna said quickly. I want to keep doing this work and I want to do it with your company. But I need to know that we've thought through all the potential problems. What would make you feel comfortable? Luna considered the question. Clear boundaries between work and personal life. My performance evaluations should be based on results, not on our relationship. And if things don't work out between us romantically, it can't affect my job security. Done, James said immediately. We can put all of that in writing if it would help. Luna felt a weight lift from her shoulders. That would help. James took her hands in his expression serious. Luna, I need you to know something. The reason I want you in this role isn't because I'm in love with you, though I am. It's because you're genuinely the best person for the job. You understand our mission better than anyone, you communicate more effectively than our entire marketing team combined, and you care about our customers in a way that can't be taught. Luna felt tears prick at her eyes. Thank you for saying that. It's the truth. James paused then smiled. Though I have to admit, working with someone I'm crazy about doesn't hurt. Luna laughed, feeling the last of her anxiety dissolve. So what happens now? Now we celebrate, James said. And then we go home and start planning how we're going to change the world, one small business at a time. As they left the conference room together, Luna caught their reflection in the polished windows, two people who had found their way to each other and were now building something bigger than either of them could create alone. She thought about the homeless woman who had been sleeping in abandoned buildings just months ago, and marveled at how completely her life had transformed. But more than that, she thought about James's father, working alone in his auto repair shop, struggling with tasks that should have been simple. She thought about Maria, nearly losing the coffee shop that was her dream. She thought about all the small business owners out there who just needed the right tools and the right support to turn their skills into success. For the first time in her life, Luna felt like she wasn't just surviving, she was contributing to something meaningful, something that would make other people's lives better. And she was doing it with someone who saw her not as a project to be fixed, but as a partner to be valued. The future stretched ahead of them, full of possibility and purpose and love. 3 weeks after the board meeting, Luna sat in her new office, a bright space with windows overlooking the city and walls covered with success stories from Whitmore Technologies customers. The title on her door read, Director of Customer Experience, and she still felt a small thrill every time she saw it. The work was challenging and rewarding in ways she'd never imagined. Her days were filled with phone calls and video chats with small business owners across the country, each conversation revealing new insights about what people really needed from business software. She'd started a monthly newsletter featuring customer success stories, and the response had been overwhelming, both from customers who wanted to share their experiences and from prospects who were inspired by what they read. But tonight, as she prepared to leave the office for a dinner date with James, Luna found herself distracted by a conversation she'd had that afternoon with her old friend Rachel, the first person she'd contacted when she got back on her feet. I'm happy for you, Rachel had said over coffee, but I have to ask, don't you think this is all happening a little fast? 6 months ago you were homeless, and now you're dating a billionaire and running a department at his company. It just seems. Seems what? Luna had asked, though she knew what Rachel was getting at. Like a fairy tale. And fairy tales don't usually happen to real people. The comment had been bothering Luna all afternoon, not because Rachel was being malicious, but because it echoed doubts she'd been trying to ignore. Was their relationship really as solid as it felt, or was she so grateful for being rescued that she'd confused gratitude with love? Hey, James said, appearing in her office doorway with the smile that never failed to make her heart skip. Ready for dinner? Luna looked at him, really looked at him, trying to separate the man from the circumstances that had brought them together. She saw the intelligence in his eyes that had first intrigued her, the genuine kindness that had made her trust him, the way his whole face lit up when he talked about work that mattered. She also saw the slight uncertainty in his expression as he registered her distracted mood. Luna? Everything okay? Can we talk? Luna said, closing her laptop and gathering her things. I mean, really talk. About us. James's expression grew serious. Of course. Do you want to go somewhere private? Your place. Absolutely, The ride to James's penthouse was quiet, both of them lost in thought. Luna found herself looking at the city passing by and thinking about all the small businesses in those buildings, the dreams being pursued, the challenges being faced, the people who just needed the right opportunity to succeed. The work she was doing felt more important than anything she'd ever done, but was that because of the work itself, or because of the man who'd given her the chance to do it? Once they were settled in James's living room with glasses of wine, Luna took a deep breath and launched into the conversation she'd been dreading. "I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me," she began. James set down his wine glass and gave her his full attention. "Always. Do you think what we have is real, or do you think we're both so grateful to have found someone who understands us that we're confusing connection with love?" The question hung in the air between them for a long moment. James didn't answer immediately, which Luna appreciated. It meant he was taking the question seriously instead of rushing to reassure her. "I've been asking myself the same thing," James said finally. "Especially after the board meeting, when I realized how much our personal and professional lives have become intertwined." Luna felt her stomach clench. "And what conclusion did you reach?" "That it doesn't matter how we started," James said quietly. "What matters is how we feel now, independent of the circumstances that brought us together. So let me ask you something. If we'd met at a coffee shop or through mutual friends, or in any normal way that people meet, would you still be attracted to me? Would you still enjoy talking to me? Would you still feel excited about building something together?" Luna considered the question honestly. "Yes," she said without hesitation. "The things I love about you have nothing to do with your money or your success. Love how you listen when I talk, really listen, not just wait for your turn to speak. I love how passionate you get about helping small businesses succeed. I love that you're willing to admit when you're wrong and change course when you need to. And I love your intelligence, your insight, your refusal to accept injustice," James said. "I love how you see possibilities where other people see problems. I love that you challenge me to be better while also accepting who I am right now." Luna felt some of the tension in her chest ease. "So why does it feel complicated?" "Because our circumstances were complicated," James said. "Because there's always going to be a part of the world that sees our story and thinks, 'Rich man saves poor woman,' instead of seeing two people who helped each other find their way." Luna nodded, grateful that he understood the external pressure she'd been feeling. "My friend Rachel thinks this is all happening too fast. She's worried that I'm confusing gratitude with love." "Are you?" James asked gently. Luna thought about it seriously. "I don't think so. The gratitude I feel toward you is separate from the love I feel for you. I'm grateful that you gave me a chance to rebuild my life, but I'm in love with the person who makes me laugh, who challenges my ideas, who makes me want to be my best self." James reached for her hand. "I fell in love with you before I ever offered you a job or an apartment. I fell in love with your mind, your resilience, your way of seeing the world. Everything else, the work, the collaboration, the life we're building together, that's all grown out of love, not the other way around." Luna felt tears prick at her eyes. "I believe that. I do. But I also need to know that I can succeed independently, that I'm not just good at this job because you're in love with me." "You want proof that your success is your own," James said, understanding immediately. "I need proof." James was quiet for a moment, then sat up straighter with the expression he got when he was solving a problem. "What if we found you opportunities to prove yourself outside of Whitmore Technologies? Speaking engagements, consulting work with other companies, writing opportunities that have nothing to do with me?" Luna felt a spark of excitement. "Would you be okay with that? With me taking on outside work? Luna, I want you to succeed because you deserve to succeed. If that means you outgrow Whitmore Technologies someday, or if it means you become so in demand that other companies try to steal you away from us, then that's a problem I'll be proud to have." Luna felt the last of her doubts dissolve. This was what real love looked like, not just wanting to be with someone, but wanting them to become their fullest self, even if that meant taking risks or facing uncertainty. "There's something else," Luna said, feeling brave enough to voice her deepest fear. "What happens if we break up? I've rebuilt my entire life around you and your company. If this relationship doesn't work out, I lose everything again." James was quiet for a long moment, and Luna could see him thinking through the implications. "That's a real concern," he said finally. "And I think the answer is that we need to make sure you're building a life that's yours, not just a life that's connected to mine." "What does that look like?" "It looks like you having your own savings account that I never touch. It looks like you building professional relationships that exist independently of me. It looks like you having friends and interests and goals that are entirely your own." James paused. And it looks like us having a legal agreement that protects you professionally if our personal relationship ends." Luna felt a mixture of relief and something deeper respect for a man who was willing to plan for the possibility of their relationship failing because he cared more about her security than his own comfort. "You do that? Put protections for me in writing?" "Luna, I'd do anything to make sure you feel safe with me. Emotionally, professionally, financially, whatever it takes." Luna felt overwhelmed by the depth of his consideration for her well-being. "I love you," she said suddenly. "Not because you saved me, not because I'm grateful, not because you've given me opportunities. I love you because you're a good man who makes me want to be a better woman." James pulled her into his arms, holding her close. "I love you too. And I promise you, whatever happens between us, you're never going to lose everything again. You're too strong, too talented, too valuable. You've built yourself back up once. You could do it again if you had to. But more importantly, you'll never have to." Luna felt peace settle over her like a warm blanket. They would face challenges, navigate the complexities of mixing love and work, deal with people who didn't understand their story. But they would face it all together, as equals, as partners who had chosen each other for all the right reasons. "So what happens now?" Luna asked, echoing the question that had become their refrain. "Now we keep building," James said. "Our careers, our company, our life together. One day at a time, one decision at a time, one dream at a time." Luna kissed him then, pouring all her love and hope and determination into the gesture. When they broke apart, she felt like she was glowing from the inside out. "I have an idea," she said. "What if we start a foundation? Something that helps other people who are facing the same challenges I faced, people with talent and determination who just need a chance to rebuild." James's eyes lit up with excitement. "That's brilliant. We could focus on providing resources for people who want to start their own businesses, or who need help transitioning back into the workforce. We could call it the Second Chances Foundation," Luna suggested. "Perfect," James said. "When do we start?" Luna laughed, feeling more excited about the future than she ever had before. "How about right now?" As they sat together making plans for their foundation, their company, their life together, Luna realized that her fairy tale wasn't about being rescued by a prince. It was about two people rescuing each other, and then using their combined strength to help rescue others. That was a story worth telling. 1 year later, Luna stood at the podium of the Grand Ballroom in the Marriott, looking out at an audience of 300 small business owners, entrepreneurs, and community leaders who had gathered for the inaugural Second Chances Foundation Gala. The event had sold out within a week of tickets going on sale, with a waiting list that stretched into the hundreds. "A year ago," Luna began, her voice clear and confident, "I was sleeping in an abandoned building, carrying everything I owned in a backpack, wondering if I'd ever get the chance to use my skills to make a difference in the world again." She paused, scanning the audience and seeing faces that had become familiar over the past months. Maria from the coffee shop, now thriving with 3 locations. Robert Kim from the board, who had become one of the foundation's most generous supporters. Rachel, who had apologized for her doubts and was now volunteering as a mentor for the foundation's writing program. "I'm not here tonight to tell you a rags to riches story," Luna continued. "I'm here to tell you about something more powerful than wealth, the moment when someone sees your potential and gives you a chance to prove it to yourself." In the front row, James sat with an expression of pure pride and love that made Luna's heart skip. Beside him sat the board of directors of both Whitmore Technologies and the Second Chances Foundation, all of whom had become invested in the work they were doing. The Second Chances Foundation was born from a simple idea, that talent and determination exist everywhere, but opportunity doesn't. Tonight, I'm proud to announce that in our first year, we've helped launch 47 new businesses, provided job training to over 200 people, and created a microloan program that has already funded 36 entrepreneurs who couldn't access traditional business loans. The audience erupted in applause, and Luna felt the same thrill she'd experienced the first time James had praised her writing, the joy of work that mattered, of making a real difference in people's lives. "But the most important thing we've learned this year," Luna said as the applause died down, "is that second chances aren't just about helping people recover from setbacks. They're about recognizing that everyone deserves the opportunity to become their fullest self, regardless of where they started or what obstacles they've faced." After her speech, Luna mingled with the crowd, hearing story after story from people whose lives had been transformed by the Foundation's programs. A single mother who had started a catering business. A veteran who had launched a carpentry service. A teacher who had created an educational app that was now being used in schools across 3 states. "You did something amazing tonight," James said when they finally had a moment alone together on the hotel's terrace. Luna leaned against the railing, looking out at the city lights that had once seemed so unwelcoming and now felt like home. We did something amazing. This foundation exists because you believed in the idea enough to fund it and support it. The foundation exists because you had the vision and the passion to make it real, James corrected. I just provided the resources. Luna turned to face him, taking in the man who had become her partner in every sense of the word. Do you ever think about how different our lives would be if you hadn't decided to find me that day? Every day, James said. But not in a nostalgic way. I think about it in a grateful way. Grateful that we found each other when we were both ready to be found. Luna smiled, remembering the conversation they'd had a year ago about fairy tales and real life. I have something to tell you, she said. James raised an eyebrow. Good news or bad news? Good news. The best news. Luna reached into her purse and pulled out a bound manuscript. I finished it. James's eyes widened as he saw the title page, Second Chances, a love story by Luna Martinez. You wrote our story? I wrote our story and the story of everyone we've helped through the foundation, and the story of what happens when people decide to see the best in each other instead of making assumptions based on circumstances. Luna felt tears prick at her eyes. And I got an offer from a publisher. A real publisher who wants to share this story with the world. James pulled her into his arms, spinning her around on the terrace. Luna, that's incredible. I'm so proud of you. There's more, Luna said when he set her down. They want to donate a portion of the proceeds to the Second Chances Foundation. They want to make the book part of a larger campaign about the power of second chances. This is going to help so many people, James said, his voice thick with emotion. I hope so. I hope it helps people understand that homelessness isn't a character flaw, that setbacks aren't permanent, that everyone deserves to be seen for their potential instead of their past. James was quiet for a moment, looking at her with an expression she couldn't quite read. Luna, there's something I need to tell you too. Luna felt her pulse quicken. What is it? James dropped to one knee on the hotel terrace, pulling a small velvet box from his jacket pocket. I need to tell you that I can't imagine my life without you. I need to tell you that you've made me a better man, a better leader, a better human being. I need to tell you that I want to spend the rest of my life building dreams with you. Luna felt tears streaming down her cheeks as James opened the box to reveal a ring that was elegant but not ostentatious, beautiful but not flashy, perfectly suited to who she was. Luna Martinez, James said, his voice shaking slightly, will you marry me? Luna looked down at the man who had seen her potential when she couldn't see it herself, who had given her not just a second chance but a completely new life, who had become her partner in work, in love and purpose. Yes, she said, her voice clear and certain. Yes, I'll marry you. As James slipped the ring onto her finger and stood to kiss her, Luna thought about the woman who had been sleeping in an abandoned building just over a year ago. That woman had been lost, broken, invisible to the world around her. But she had also been strong, intelligent, and full of potential that was waiting for the right moment to bloom. Now, standing on a hotel terrace with the man she loved, about to publish a book that could help others find their second chances, Luna realized that her story had never been about being rescued. It had been about being seen, valued, and given the opportunity to become who she was always meant to be. The city lights sparkled below them like stars, and somewhere in those buildings, Luna knew there were people facing the same challenges she had faced, carrying the same dreams she had carried. Thanks to the foundation, some of them would get the second chances they deserved. Thanks to her book, even more might find hope in her story. But more than any of that, Luna had found something she'd never expected when she was sleeping on concrete floors and wondering if she'd ever matter to anyone again. She had found love that was real, work that was meaningful, and a future that was limitless. As James held her close on the terrace, Luna whispered a promise to the universe that she would never forget where she came from, never take for granted what she'd been given, and never stop working to ensure that others got the same chances she'd received. The story that had begun with the most unsettling discovery, a homeless woman living undetected in an empty building, had become something beautiful beyond imagining. And this, Luna realized, was just the beginning. Dear listeners, thank you so much for joining Luna and James on their incredible journey from that stormy night in an abandoned building to the gala celebrating their foundation's success. Their story reminds us that love can bloom in the most unexpected circumstances, and that sometimes our greatest challenges become the foundation for our most meaningful triumphs. I'd love to hear from you. What moment in Luna and James's story resonated most with you? Have you ever experienced a second chance that changed your life's direction? Do you believe that true love can overcome significant differences in background and circumstances? Which character's growth surprised you the most, Luna finding her voice and confidence again, or James rediscovering his purpose beyond wealth? Share your thoughts in the comments below.